But if some of you softies insist on sleeping on the bed, I reckon you can do worse than a Luffler easy rest.
When the Andy Griffith Show first aired, it felt effortless. Easy laughs, gentle pacing, small-town charm that looked so buttoned up, you assumed nothing ever slipped past notice. Every pause felt intentional. Every reaction looked rehearsed. The show built that kind of trust with its audience. But buried inside that calm, carefully controlled world is a moment that wasn't cleaned up, wasn't reshot, and definitely wasn't meant to stay. It made it to air exactly as it happened. So how did this blooper sneak past editors, producers, and decades of rewatches? And why do most viewers still miss it? Let's slow it down and take a closer look. The show was created because Griffith was failing on Broadway. It's hard to name a sitcom that feels as universally trusted as The Andy Griffith Show. Set in the quiet, fictional town of Mayberry, North Carolina, it followed Sheriff Andy Taylor, steady, patient, and quietly wise, as he raised his young son Opie and kept order among a town that rarely meant harm, even when it caused trouble. There was the calm authority of Andy, the wide-eyed curiosity of Opie, and, of course, the constant chaos brought on by his well-meaning but tightly wound deputy, Barney Fife. Mayberry worked because it felt lived in. Nothing flashy, nothing rushed. The humor came softly, often from human flaws rather than punchlines. That balance made every beat feel deliberate, as though nothing could ever drift off course. The character of Andy Taylor first appeared in February 1960 on The Danny Thomas Show, quietly testing the waters. By October 3, 1960, the full series premiered and immediately locked in its audience. The response wasn't gradual, it was instant. Over 8 seasons, the show never fell out of America's top 10, racking up multiple Emmy wins for Don Knotts, even as its lead, Andy Griffith, remained oddly unawarded. Spin-offs followed: Gomer Pyle, USMC, Mayberry, RFD. And decades later, the original series still loops endlessly in reruns, its reputation intact, its place in television history rarely questioned. What makes that success more interesting is how close it came to never happening at all. Before Mayberry, Griffith wasn't a sitcom star. He started as a comedy monologist, worked his way to Broadway, and earned a Tony nomination along the way. Hollywood followed, and for a moment, it seemed promising. He led a face in the crowd, then starred in No Time for Sergeants alongside Knott's. But as the 1950s faded, so did his momentum. The work slowed, the path forward blurred. That uncertainty is what gave birth to The Andy Griffith Show. In a 2003 conversation with Larry King, Griffith explained that he was performing in a struggling musical called Destry, watching ticket sales falter, and realizing that neither film nor theater was opening doors anymore. He didn't want to return to nightclubs. He wanted something steadier, something lasting. So he went directly to Louis Mars, President Dave Lasfogel, and admitted it plainly. His options were running out. Television might be the only move left. That conversation led to Sheldon Leonard being sent to see him perform. The reaction was simple. They shot a pilot. It aired within The Danny Thomas Show. And it sold. No grand gamble. No dramatic reinvention. Just a quiet pivot at the right moment. And from that pivot came a series so polished, so controlled, so carefully paced, that viewers never imagined anything getting past the editors. Barney had multiple middle names. If you pay close attention to the show, you start to notice irregularities in surprisingly small places. Barney's middle name, for instance, or rather, his many middle names. At different points in the series, Barney Fife is given entirely different initials, as though the detail never quite settled into place. In one episode, it's Oliver. In another, it's Milton. Then there's a moment where the show avoids the issue altogether, reducing it to a vague P, as if even the writers weren't sure which version to commit to. None of these names line up, not tonally, not logically, and certainly not canonically. They're scattered, unrelated, and contradictory. For a show built on precision and consistency, it's an odd slip. Small enough to pass unnoticed, strange enough to linger once you catch it, and once you do, it's hard not to wonder how something that basic drifted so freely in a world that otherwise felt so tightly held together. The fishing hole was actually in the middle of LA. The Andy Griffith Show may have sold the illusion of rural North Carolina, but the reality was far more Hollywood. The series was filmed on sound stages in California, not in Mayberry's supposed backyard. Even so, there's one detail that still catches people off guard. The fishing hole from the opening credits, the one that feels removed from everything, is not tucked away in the countryside. It sits squarely in Los Angeles, inside a public park that runs right up against Beverly Hills. That spot is part of Franklin Canyon Park, a 605-acre stretch of land known as much for casual bike rides and bird watching as it is for camera crews. Long before it doubled as Andy and Opie's peaceful retreat, the park had already become familiar territory for Hollywood. It's appeared in Twin Peaks, NCIS, The Brady Bunch, and even Purple Rain. The contrast is hard to ignore. A place framed as untouched and far removed from the world, quietly sitting in the middle of one of the busiest cities in America. And once you know that, the scene doesn't lose its charm. It just reveals how carefully the illusion was built. Griffith and Knott were opposite of their characters in real life. On screen, Andy was the steady one, calm, measured, always a step ahead of the chaos. Barney, on the other hand, lived in a constant state of nervous energy, tripping over his own authority and supplying most of the show's physical comedy. That contrast felt so natural, it was easy to assume it reflected real life. It didn't. Behind the scenes of the Andy Griffith Show, the personalities flipped in a way that surprises a lot of fans. Andy Griffith was looser, warmer, and more playful than his on-screen persona suggested. Meanwhile, Don Knotts, the man responsible for Barney's endless jittery antics, was far more serious in real life. Thoughtful, reserved, precise. It's one of those ironies that fits the show perfectly. The man playing the calm authority carried mischief with him off camera, while the man playing the town clown approached his work with almost surgical focus. And once you know that, their performances don't feel less convincing. They feel even more intentional. Knotts went into the first episode, not knowing if he would return. When the very first episode of The Andy Griffith Show went into production, nothing was guaranteed. Most of the cast stepped onto that set without the comfort of long-term contracts or any promise of what came next. Even the future of the show itself was still a question mark. That uncertainty extended to Don Knotts. He walked into the debut episode not knowing whether Barney Fife would be a one-time appearance or something more. There was no assurance he'd be back for a second episode, let alone a full season. What changed everything was what happened on screen. The chemistry between Andy and Barney landed immediately. It wasn't forced. It wasn't tentative. It clicked. And once the director saw how naturally the dynamic worked, the hesitation disappeared. Knotts wasn't just brought back. He was locked in. In a show that felt carefully planned, one of its most essential characters almost slipped away before it even began. Opie was not the one who threw the rock in the intro. In the opening credits of The Andy Griffith Show, the moment looks effortless. Opie winds up and tosses a rock into the water. It arcs cleanly and lands with a satisfying splash, and the scene moves on without drawing attention to itself. But that splash isn't Opie's. At 6 years old, Ron Howard tried again and again to throw the rock far enough for the shot. Each time, it fell short. The camera waited. The attempts continued. Eventually, the crew made a quiet decision. Opie would make the motion, and someone off camera would do the rest. So when Opie's arm swings forward, the rock you see sailing into the water comes from backstage, timed perfectly to sell the illusion. It's seamless, invisible. And once you know it, the moment doesn't feel fake. It feels carefully protected, preserved just enough to keep the calm intact. Knott asked for part ownership of the show, and Griffith declined. By the end of the 5th season of The Andy Griffith Show, the future felt uncertain. The assumption behind the scenes was that the show had run its course. With that belief in place, Don Knott didn't hesitate. He moved on quickly and lined up new work almost immediately, treating the chapter as closed. Then the direction shifted. Andy Griffith agreed to return for a 6th season, reopening a door that seemed firmly shut. Knott was willing to step back into Mayberry too, but this time he came with a condition. He wanted part ownership of the show. Griffith said no. That answer settled everything. With the request declined, Knott chose not to return as Barney Fife. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't public. Just a quiet business decision that reshaped the show's future and marked the end of one of television's most iconic partnerships. Aunt Bee and Andy didn't get along in real life. On screen, Aunt Bee felt like the heart of Mayberry. Gentle, patient, always steady beside Andy. But behind the scenes of The Andy Griffith Show, that warmth didn't always translate. Frances Bavier, who spent a decade playing Andy's spinster aunt on both The Andy Griffith Show and Mayberry RFD, won an Emmy for the role. Yet working on the series wasn't as cozy as it appeared. Bavier came from a Broadway background and had already built a serious resume, including a role in The Day the Earth Stood Still. Over time, she grew conflicted about Aunt Bee becoming her defining identity. She reflected that playing the character for 10 years made it difficult for people to see her as anything beyond the role, explaining that the recognition she received was no longer for her as a person, but for a part created on screen. That tension seemed to bleed into life on set. Some co-stars later described her demeanor as distant. Ken Berry, who worked with her on Mayberry RFD, remembered her fondly, calling her kind and sweet. Andy Griffith, however, was more candid. He admitted there was simply something about him she didn't like, a rift that never quite softened. Still, her relationship with Aunt Bee wasn't purely bitter. After retiring, Bavier chose to settle in Siler City, North Carolina, just minutes from Mount Airy, the real town that inspired Mayberry. And when she passed away in 1989, she was laid to rest beneath a tombstone bearing not only her name, but also the one the world never stopped calling her by, Aunt Bee. Ron's eyes were always burning. Being a child on a working television set wasn't charming or carefree. It meant long hours, adult expectations, and learning how to exist in a world that wasn't built for kids. Cameras waited, adults moved fast, and the line between playtime and performance blurred early. For Ron Howard, that reality was especially vivid on the set of The Andy Griffith Show. Years later, he described the crew as salty old characters, men who swore freely and drank hard, bringing an energy that was loud, loose, and anything but gentle. Cigarettes were everywhere. Smoke hung in the air constantly. The result was simple and uncomfortable. His eyes burnt all the time. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't framed as hardship. Just a quiet detail that says everything about the era and the environment. While viewers saw innocence and calm on screen, a young boy stood just off-center, squinting through smoke, doing his job and learning early how to adapt. Andy's kindness fostered Ron's growth. For Ron Howard, growing up on The Andy Griffith Show meant more than learning how to hit marks or deliver lines. It became a space where he grew into himself, shaped quietly by the presence of Andy Griffith. Photos from the set tell part of the story. The closeness looks natural, unforced, and something deeper than co-stars sharing a frame. Over time, Griffith stepped into a role that went beyond television. He became a steady father figure, offering guidance and reassurance as Ron navigated a world most children never touch. Griffith understood the weight of that responsibility early on. He saw how unusual the environment was for a child and made a point of supporting Ron's family, ensuring the experience felt grounded rather than overwhelming. Ron later reflected that while other children might resent acting, he never did. He felt comfortable there. He understood the rhythm of the place. It was an environment where he knew he was doing well. And behind that confidence was someone quietly making sure he always had room to grow. There was actually a second Andy Griffith Show. There was a moment when Andy Griffith walked away from the Andy Griffith Show at the absolute height of its power. In 1968, with the series sitting comfortably as the number one show in America, Griffith stepped aside. The reason was simple and quietly anxious. He didn't want to spend the rest of his career trapped inside Andy Taylor, playing variations of the same Southern figure forever. So when he returned to television in 1970, he made a sharp turn. The headmaster cast him as the head of a polished California prep school. No sheriff, no small town, no porch wisdom. But the audience didn't follow. After CBS aired the 14 episodes already in the can, the network pulled the plug. And then came the pivot. In its place arrived the new Andy Griffith Show. Griffith was back in North Carolina again, though not in Mayberry. This time it was Greenwood. He wasn't a sheriff either. He was Andy Sawyer, a temporary mayor, married, more folksy, and operating in a town much bigger than the one viewers remembered. The show insisted it wasn't a revival, yet the echoes were hard to miss. George Lindsay and Paul Hartman openly reprised their original characters. Don Knotts even appeared as an unnamed figure who felt uncomfortably close to Barney Fife, different on paper, familiar in every other way. The premiere in January 1971 drew strong curiosity. Then the numbers slid. CBS was also busy reshaping its image, and the show didn't fit the direction they wanted. After just 10 episodes, it was gone. Griffith spent the next stretch drifting through television movies and guest spots on shows like Hawaii Five-0 and The Mod Squad. It wasn't until 1986 that he fully reclaimed television stardom, this time as criminal defense attorney Ben Matlock on Matlock. He tried to outrun Mayberry. He even circled back to it under a different name. But it took nearly 2 decades before he finally found a role that let him stand just as tall without it. The Shattered Glass. Part of the Andy Griffith Show's appeal was how seamless everything felt. The world of Mayberry moved calmly, confidently, as though nothing ever went wrong behind the scenes. But every now and then, early television shows their seams, and one moment in particular gives the game away. In the episode The Big House, Barney is deep in instruction mode, proudly teaching Gomer how to draw his gun properly. He's serious, focused, fully convinced he's shaping a professional. Gomer, eager to impress, steps up and gives it a try right in front of Andy. That's when it happens. The gun move goes wrong, and a glass behind them shatters on impact. It's sudden, clean, unmistakable. The kind of slip that feels too real to be planned. Then the camera cuts away. When it cuts back, the shelf behind them is spotless. No broken glass. No damage. Nothing. The moment resets itself as if the accident never occurred at all. It's a blink and you miss it error, but once you see it, it's impossible to unsee. A quiet reminder that even in a show built on calm perfection, continuity didn't always keep up. And in Mayberry, apparently, even broken glass could magically heal itself between shots. Floyd's glasses. For a show that prided itself on calm order, The Andy Griffith Show had a few moments where continuity wandered off on its own. One of the most noticeable slips happens in the Season 4 episode The Rumor, and it plays out right on Floyd's face. In one shot, he's wearing a particular pair of glasses. Then the camera cuts. When the camera returns, the glasses have changed completely. It was still the same scene, the same conversation, but different specs. It felt as if the glasses decided to swap themselves out between angles. It's subtle, but once you catch it, it becomes impossible to ignore. Floyd carries on as if nothing's changed, while his eyewear tells a different story. A similar blink and you'll miss it moment shows up in Barney's physical. In one scene, Barney appears in a plain plaid shirt. Nothing fancy, nothing extra. Then the shot cuts to him seated at the table. And suddenly, the shirt has evolved. Same pattern, same color. But now there's a pocket, neatly holding a pack of cigarettes that hadn't existed moments earlier. The transition happens without acknowledgement, without pause, and without explanation. Barney doesn't move fast enough to change clothes. The scene doesn't reset. It just happens. They're small mistakes, easy to overlook, but they reveal the reality beneath Mayberry's polish. Early television moved quickly, trusted the audience not to look too closely, and occasionally let details slip through the cracks. And somehow, those slips don't disrupt the charm. They add to it. The bike bell that wouldn't stay put. In the Season 4 episode Opie's Ill-Gotten Gain, The Andy Griffith Show delivers one of those continuity slips that feels almost playful once you notice it. The episode itself sits in a strange place in history, airing just 4 days before the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. But inside Mayberry, time keeps moving at its usual unhurried pace. Early on, Opie's bike comes into view, and everything looks exactly as it should. The bell is mounted on the left side of the handlebars, clearly visible and perfectly ordinary. The scene unfolds. The camera cuts away. Nothing feels out of place. Then the shot returns to the bike. Without explanation or movement, the bell has switched sides. It now sits on the right, as if it made the decision to relocate while no one was looking. Opie doesn't touch it. No one reacts, and the scene carries on, unfazed. It's a small mistake, the kind early television rarely slowed down to fix. But it's also a reminder of how quickly these episodes were made, how much trust was placed in the flow of the scene, and how even in Mayberry, not every detail stayed exactly where it started. The magic trench coat. In the Season 4 episode A Black Day for Mayberry, The Andy Griffith Show slips into blooper territory in a way that's almost theatrical. Barney enters the Mayberry Hotel looking sharp, trench coat neatly in place, completely dry from collar to cuff. He moves through the scene without incident, the coat behaving exactly as expected. Then, the camera cuts. For a brief moment, the trench coat looks like it's been caught in a downpour. It's visibly soaked, darkened with moisture, as if Barney has just stepped in from a storm that never existed. There's no setup, no explanation. And just as quickly as it appears, the effect disappears. Another cut, and the coat is dry again, restored to its original state, without so much as a comment. The same episode delivers a second slip, this time inside the courthouse. 2 Treasury agents wait for the sheriff's return, seated calmly in the background. The agent on the right stands out, dressed in a lighter-colored suit. He's played by Rance Howard, a detail longtime fans appreciate, knowing he's Ron Howard's real-life father. Opie enters. The camera shifts, and when it cuts back, something's off. The agents are still there, sitting in the same place, but they aren't the same men. Freeze the frame, and it becomes clear. Different actors, same positions, same scene, no acknowledgement. It's the kind of moment early television trusted viewers not to stop on. A wet coat that dries itself. Two men who quietly swap identities between shots. Small cracks in Mayberry's calm surface, reminding us that even the most carefully built worlds had to move fast and let a few things slip. The bear who brought back up. In Season 3 of The Andy Griffith Show, the episode Andy and the New Mayor raises the stakes by introducing something Mayberry rarely dealt with. A live bear. It's unexpected, slightly absurd, and instantly memorable. The kind of gag that leans on surprise as much as spectacle. The bear commands the scene, but look closely, and the illusion starts to thin. Just off to the side, partially hidden behind a tree, the bear's handler briefly peeks into frame. It's quick, easy to miss, but once you catch it, the moment becomes hard to forget. Later in the episode, the curtain pulls back again. A chain around the bear becomes visible, a practical necessity slipping into view, quietly reminding viewers that this wasn't Mayberry magic at work. It was careful choreography and a lot of trust between animal and handler. The scene still works, the humor still lands, but the edges show just enough to reveal how ambitious early television could be, and how even a small town built on calm simplicity sometimes needed a very real safety net just out of sight. The window that led nowhere. In the early seasons of The Andy Griffith Show, Mayberry's layout looks solid and dependable, at least at first glance. From the outside of the sheriff's office, everything appears exactly where it should be. There's a door at the center, and just to the left of it, a window clearly visible on the exterior wall. Then the scene moves inside. Once you're in the office, that window is gone. No glass, no frame, no sign it ever existed. The interior walls tell a different story entirely, one that doesn't quite line up with what the exterior promised moments earlier. It's a small mismatch, but it lingers once you notice it. Eventually, the inconsistency didn't go unnoticed behind the scenes either. The producers caught the error and corrected it in later seasons, restoring a sense of spatial order to Mayberry. The fix wasn't flashy. It didn't draw attention to itself. It simply brought the town back into alignment. Even so, the missing window remains one of those early quirks that reminds you how the world of Mayberry was built piece by piece, sometimes revealing its seams before everything settled into place. A legendary farewell. When The Andy Griffith Show signed off for the final time, it didn't fade out quietly or limp toward the finish line. It ended exactly where every show hopes to be, at the top. The series closed its run as the #1 rated show on television, a rare and almost untouchable achievement that places it in an incredibly small club, shared only with I Love Lucy and Seinfeld. No decline, no loss of audience, no sense that the magic had worn thin. Even then, the ending carried one last quiet twist. Although it was the final episode filmed, A Girl for Goober was not the final episode aired. That distinction went to Mayberry RFD, an episode designed to ease viewers into the spin-off rather than close the door outright. A subtle reminder that television endings are often more logistical than emotional. Still, the moment felt historic. Journalists from a wide range of publications gathered on set to document the conclusion, fully aware they were watching something rare. According to Andy and Don by Daniel DeVise, Andy Griffith greeted the reporters kindly, though he didn't have much to say. He admitted that the morning felt strange, explaining that it carried the same weight he'd felt 3 years earlier when Don Knotts left the show. One reporter observed that the cast and crew looked as though each of them had just finished running 1,000 miles, drained in the way only long chapters leave you. Griffith himself seemed suspended in that uncertainty, quietly wondering aloud what he would even do the following week. For Ron Howard, at least, the future was simpler. Still a kid, he returned to Burbank Public Schools the next Monday to finish out his education, slipping back into a routine that felt worlds away from Mayberry. Around 4 o'clock that afternoon, the show filmed its final scene. TV Guide captured the moment with careful precision, describing Sheriff Andy Taylor silhouetted against the jail cell mock-up on Stage 1 at Desilu Studios, a 6-pointed silver star pinned to the left breast of his gabardine uniform. Griffith reportedly struggled to stay in character as he delivered the last line he would ever film for the series. A simple question directed at Goober about a date, asking whether he planned to see her again. Then the cameras stopped rolling. The lights went dark, and Andy Griffith stopped being the sheriff of Mayberry. He walked off the soundstage and removed the badge, a quiet physical act that carried the weight of 8 years. That evening, 251 guests gathered at Griffith's Golf Club in Toluca Lake for the wrap party. When he finally spoke, he kept it brief, emotion breaking through as tears rolled down his cheeks. He told them it had been awfully good, the best 8 years of his life, and promised he'd see them again. It's the cleanest goodbye television can offer, a show choosing to step away while viewers were still fully invested, still watching, still believing in the world it built. Mayberry didn't overstay its welcome. It simply stopped, complete and intact, leaving behind the rare feeling of something ending exactly when it should. Did you notice any other bloopers in the Andy Griffith Show? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also click the next video on your screen. You will enjoy it.